Donggu, a very skilled stealer. He doesn't aim for common robberies. Instead, he's an artistic one. His eyes are on antiques and cultural artifacts. For any good theft, even a skilled player needs a team. He has a father and his daughter. The father can organize the whole plan for them, while the daughter is not only an expert when it comes to technology, but also can flatter anyone as if they are the best in what they do. Anyway, this time they decided to rob a statue from a temple. It has been guarded by the monks for about 1,000 years. He dressed as one of the monks, then did the job as smoothly as possible. The next day, the statue disappeared, and the detective came to investigate it. Donggu was searching for someone to buy the statue, but they were all amateurs. None of them knew the real value of the statue and were offering a low price. At that time, a very rich businessman and CEO of a famous hotel was collecting any artifacts he could get to. He had designed a huge vault for these precious pieces and hired an expert who developed the perfect security system for it. Then, he ordered his gangster, who finishes all the dirty work for him, to kill the expert so no one could ever access the vault. That CEO turned out to be the new chairman of the Korean Asset Foundation, so he has a lot of influence. Once he heard about the statue, he wanted to add it to his collection, so he ordered his right hand, Sihi, the one who manages all the important deals for him, to get it for him. So by her order, the gangster sent his men to bring Donggu to him. He tried to threaten him and take the statue, but Donggu was smarter. He threw hot water in his face, passed through his men, and almost escaped before he was surrounded by them again. He was about to be killed this time, until the detective came after hearing the fight. They kept blaming each other until the detective found out it was a fake statue. The daughter switched the statue when she bumped into him while running, so no one was going to be arrested, and Donggu left his number for the gangster to make a better deal next time. After that, he got the call and went to meet the gangster. The gangster wanted to betray the CEO and take the statue for himself, so he brought a VIP client from China, only to be surprised that Sihi came with that client as a counselor. She knew about his plan, so she acted as if the statue was fake to get rid of the client, then warned the gangster to cross the limits again, or she would tell the CEO. Finally, she told Donggu to make the deal with her instead. He agreed. She gave him all the money he requested in the form of casino chips to avoid suspicions. He took the money and lost it all at one shot through gambling everything on the wrong color. Due to his recklessness, Sihi offered him another job, as someone like him would go through anything with no fear. This time, she asked him to steal the murals from a royal tomb in China. He gladly accepted the challenge. The thing is, going in and out of any tomb is a piece of cake for him, but removing the murals and transferring them needs an expert, so he went to find the right man for it, someone called Dr. Jones. He was struggling financially as there were no customers for his little store, so the daughter used her flattering techniques to convince him that he's the Indiana Jones of his time. Someone like him should seize the fame due to his great skills. Then Donggu showed him his share of the money. It didn't take long until he was with them explaining the plan. Then they traveled to China. There was a man waiting for them to help them with whatever they needed. They arrived at the tomb, found the entrance, and went in. Then Dr. Jones started removing the murals in a particular way to avoid damaging them. They collected every part successfully and were about to leave. But the man who guided them held the gun against them. He took orders to kill them and delivered the murals instead. To distract him, Donggu and Dr. Jones acted as if they were fighting, then took the gun away, and after some action, they knocked him out. Then they went back to Korea, where Sihi, the gangster, and the CEO were waiting for them to be dead, but they were perfectly fine. And Donggu kept shouting until the CEO got out of his car and faced him directly. Donggu asked him to give them their money and take their murals with no harm to anyone. And the CEO agreed. This was the moment Donggu was waiting for his whole life. That's because his father was a grave robber, and he always accompanied him. One time, while they were stealing a grave, his father sent him inside to get a very rare, beautiful vase. After Donggu got it out, he found the CEO waiting for him instead. He took the vase away, then dropped the father's body after he killed him into the grave, and buried the child with it. But Donggu was saved by another grave robber by accident, and lived all this long to have his revenge. Then, he started gathering with his team, and Dr. Jones joined them to discuss their new plan, a legendary royal sword that was said to be the foundation for the Joseon dynasty and was known to be destroyed. Then he went to the CEO to convince him with these words. Of course, he didn't believe it until Donggu showed him a royal document that proved its existence. The CEO got an expert and was so excited it was true because the one who has this sword can be a legend. However, Donggu told him he would not get the sword until he proves that he's worth it. So the CEO took him to his secret vault to prove that he's more than worth it. Donggu was surprised. Seeing all these artifacts in one place, including his father's vase, fueled his anger even more. It was all good until the CEO was aiming his gun at Donggu's head. He wanted to know who he was and why he got so close to him. But Donggu defended himself, saying that the CEO was the one who approached him because of the statue. And after all, he just wanted the money. He offered the CEO to get him the sword in return for a lot of money. The CEO agreed, especially because there will be some construction work in the area where the royal tomb exists. The CEO ordered Sihi to give him whatever he needs, and she did. She and Donggu started to get closer. Anyway, the new plan was in a public place, so they needed to dig under the ground to get to it. For that, they went to the best digger ever. No one could convince him to join the squad until Donggu promised him a blind date if he came along, and that offer was enough to make him jump right away in the car. After that, they started buying all the properties on the ground to make sure they could move freely without being exposed. They were digging from a bar to the tomb. They only dug at night, during the work hours of the bar. The guards outside prevented people from coming, saying the bar is crowded and there is no room for more. To cover the digging sound, they increased the music volume to the maximum, and the gangsters seemed to enjoy singing all night while watching them do the hard work. They kept doing this every day, but they were met with a huge barrier. They couldn't keep digging without using some explosives. It was impossible to do it without getting attention. So Donggu thought of the perfect idea. They put a gas truck above the same spot they needed to bomb. It will explode at the same time as the bomb underground. Everyone will focus on the truck, and they will go unnoticed. It went well. But the detective who was investigating the statue recognized Donggu near the explosion and went to meet him. After Donggu came back to continue their plan, the gangster kidnapped him and took him to the CO. That's because they were following Donggu around and knew he conspired with the police against them. They were about to drop him in the water until Donggu screamed that the detective wanted to meet him because he heard that the gangster was working for a rich CEO and that gangster wanted to take the statue for himself. However, he failed, so he was chasing the gangster to get to the corrupt CEO and arrest him. Donggu proved his words with a recording of his conversation with the detective. Hearing that, the CEO went crazy on the gangster and almost beat him to death, but gave him one last chance to get the royal sword with Donggu. Then, they all went back to digging for their lives. Finally, they reached the tomb on the right time. It was the day when the construction in the area will start, but due to heavy rain, it will be delayed until the rain stops. That was enough time for Donggu and Dr. Jones to get the sword out. They started penetrating the tomb while the CEO was witnessing the whole process through his laptop. To everyone's desire, the sword was really there. Once the CEO saw it, he sent the gangster to kill everyone and get the sword. However, the gangster wanted the sword for himself and went to kill them. He was surprised that they couldn't get the sword out due to the heavy rains flooding the tunnel. Although Donggu said it was impossible to succeed, the gangster wanted it at any price and threatened that no one will leave until he gets it. Donggu knew they were going to die if they remained there, so he got into an intense fight with the gangster and was able to escape, leaving the gangster to his fate trapped underground, while he and Dr. Jones were safe. Meanwhile, Sihi was absent from all this action because she was busy doing another thing. She had been working with the CEO for too long, waiting for her time to rise. She planned to steal every artifact in his vault while he was focusing on getting the sword. She managed to make a spare key and get the biometrics of the CEO from the expert who built the vault. It turned out that after the gangster left him to die, she had some people ready to save him. Back to Donggu and Dr. Jones, when they got out of the tunnel, the CEO was pointing his gun at them for losing his precious sword. But Donggu told him there was still a way to get the sword before the construction begins at dawn. They will explode some water pipes in the street to distract attention away from them. Then, while everyone tries to manage the crisis, they will go in as a construction team to secure the place. They did go in without a single doubt. Donggu started using the construction tools that were on the site to break into the tomb from above. The long-awaited moment came when he finally touched the tomb with his bare hands. Then he asked the CEO to come open it himself to reclaim his reward. The CEO excitedly descended into the grave, opening the tomb to find nothing. He thought Donggu had deceived him and hid the sword in the tunnel and was about to kill him until Donggu revealed that he was the son of the grave robber he killed in the past. He shocked him even more by telling him that while he was chasing after a royal sword that doesn't exist, his vault was emptied of everything. He had a double plan. He and Dr. Jones tricked the CEO with the sword tale, and even the expert who approved the royal document was hired by them, while the rest of the team stole the vault. That's why when Sihi got there to steal them, it was too late. She was frustrated. She lost them all after years of waiting. Anyway, after losing everything, the CEO shot Donggu and threatened to kill him if he didn't return all that he took. So Donggu attacked him, taking the gun away and aiming it back at him. However, instead of killing him, he left him in the grave and went up to see his team had tied all the CEO's men for him. Then they buried the CEO, who was screaming for help. The next day, all the artifacts from the vault were in front of the Cultural Heritage Administration. Donggu had made an agreement with the detective before all of this happened. He asked him to do the recording about the gangster to gain the CEO's trust, and in return, he will return all the artifacts to the government. And the detective was proud after seeing them keeping their part of the deal. They didn't get out of all of this empty-handed. They got so much cash from the vault, enough for all of them. They were crying from happiness. As for the CEO, When the construction began, they found his body starving, but he was still alive. They took him to the hospital to arrest him later since the truth was revealed. That's because when Dong-gu delivered the artifacts to the government, he did it in Seihi's name, as if she were the one who exposed the CEO's corruption once she knew that all the artifacts he was collecting were through illegal means. Although she was mad she lost her treasure, she used that and showed up on TV as a hero who felt guilty for not revealing the truth earlier. She was seen as an angel, but she couldn't care less. She was just glad she didn't end up with the CEO in prison. Finally, she got a call from Dong-gu telling her that he and his team are leaving for Japan to retrieve some Korean treasure and asked her to join. Obviously, she has no reason to say no at all, and their new mission shall be as great as the ones before.